Hello, Year 13. Apologies that this isn't a live lesson. This is because obviously Thursday is the day where some of you might be scheduled for your testing prior to coming back to the academy. So I didn't know whether people would have missed this lesson because of this. So we're doing it as a pre-recorded lesson so that way all can access. Now, just a reminder, we're looking at the 1950s. We're looking at arguments to see how we can define that as a turning point. And also within that, we're looking at changes in our themes, whether the federal government starts to help the movement, whether anti-rights movements decline, whether the civil rights movement itself begins to grow. So we're covering a number of bases here. So last lesson we looked at 1954 and the Brown v. Board of Education. Today we're going to move on to look at the murder of Emmett Till, albeit briefly, and the Montgomery bus boycott. So just on to the next slide. Okay, hopefully a couple of lessons ago you did engage with the task I set and you watched the Eyes on the Prize documentary, because that gives a really good account of the murder of Emmett Till and its significance. But in terms of our view from the plane, in terms of our synthesis angle, we would never need to tell the story of Emmett Till as a narrative. What we have to understand is its significance. And many historians have argued that it's a key turning point because it puts a spotlight on racial prejudice and injustice in the South. So the murder of Till encouraged many blacks to become civil rights activists, so African Americans in the South were motivated by Emmett Till's murder to get involved. And it also stimulated interest in the northern cities and amongst liberal whites as well. So it kind of exposed something that had been hidden for a long time. And that's the dirty secret of the South. Segregation and racial violence became a reality, and it makes worldwide headlines. So that makes it a turning point. And if you want to draw comparisons with the Black Lives Matter movement, it is probably fitting to do so. It was a signature event that sparked protest and indignation across the country and helped spur on the movement. And that's how we'd use the murder of Emmett Till as an example in our exam. It's about incentivizing the grassroots activism and putting rocket boosters under the civil rights movement, you could argue. Okay, that's all we need to do on Emmett Till. So on to the next little bit. Okay, so the key event today is to look at the Montgomery bus, or the key activity today is to look at the Montgomery bus boycott and understand that that's the beginning of a mass grassroots movement in the South with King at its forefront. And we see him here in 1963. So let's move on to our task. So just some context to begin with. In 1954, the Brown decision overturned the Plessy v. Ferguson ruling. The Brown decision said that separate but equal treatment was now unconstitutional. So all forms of segregation were now technically illegal, unlawful, unconstitutional. However, the Supreme Court's decision did not mean the end of Jim Crow. It merely established a legal precedent whereby blacks could expect to successfully challenge segregation laws. But remember, the Brown decision took 4 years to go through the courts. So without a national law passed by the President and Congress to end segregation that trumped state law, blacks or African Americans would have to file their own court cases to fight segregation and do so city by city, state by state. And that's going to take decades. So obviously the disappointment with the Brown decision and the realization that didn't end segregation, it was just the beginning of the end, motivates activism across the South. And this process began in earnest in Montgomery in December 1955, but it would be in the face of concerted white opposition. Okay, on to the central task today. Okay, so attached to Firefly, you should find quite a detailed analysis of the Montgomery bus boycott. You need to read it as carefully as you can, highlight relevant bits, and as you read it, you should be able to make some considered notes, and those notes will be across a number of themes. So we do need a very brief, and I stress brief, narrative of the boycott, the who, the what, the when, the why, the where, nothing that's going to be more than 3 or 4 bullet points, though. The positive impact of the boycott. So thinking of our themes: federal government, Supreme Court, civil rights movement. Can you find anything to put under that heading? The limitations of the boycott, the argument about not being quite the turning point that some believed, and then you can make some judgments about where you feel the boycott fits, its significance, importance, both for the 1950s as a turning point and within our separate themes of federal government, at Black or African American activism, etc. So we'll get that done, and then on to the final task for today. Okay, so this is all about the view from the plane. It's all about synthesis. It's all about condensing these case studies we're looking down to into bare bones, into key points that we could use in an essay that's going to run across 120 years and is only going to take us 45 to 50 minutes to write in an exam. So you've got your big grids evaluating the 1950s based on our themes of federal government, Black activism, states' rights and anti-rights movements. You should be able to now put in some further evidence of progress in terms of Black activism. You should, when you read page 107, be able to discern there's some progress also in terms of the Supreme Court remaining positive. And you can perhaps start to put in some notes about anti-rights movements as well. But that'll just start to get you the big picture that you need. Once you do that, or once you've done that, you've concluded your studies of Emmett Till and the Montgomery bus boycott. And then tomorrow we'll finish the 50s by looking at the Little Rock case study and Eisenhower Civil Rights Act. And then that'll conclude our study of 1950s. Okay, thanks for doing this work. We look forward to seeing you back next